something I often say is codependency is like the silent killer in all of our relationships because things like this happen and we make ourselves small, we silence ourselves over and over and over again, and it just strengthens that dynamic even more instead of giving other people the opportunity to rise to the occasion to change in the dynamic as well. Hey babes, welcome to Codependency Alchemy, your go to podcast and community for the raw and sometimes uncomfortable truths we need to face in order to create relationships that actually feel good. I'm Alyssa, your favorite codependency and relationship coach, here to teach you all of the lessons and things that I learned the hard way, so hopefully you don't have to. This week, we're going to get into a common dynamic that comes up in a lot of codependent relationships, one that often leaves us feeling dismissed, invalidated, and disrespected. So let's dive into this week's episode. Okay, babes, I really wanted to make this question that came through in the Codependency Alchemy membership chat into a podcast episode because it's just too relatable. In so many relationships, mine included, this pattern and dynamic tends to come up quite often. And my response to this person just felt so like important to share with our community in a bigger way outside of just our membership chat. So I really wanted to bring it here. But to give you guys context, this is what the member had wrote in the Codependency Alchemy chat. For those of you who are new here, I guess I'll give you some context also to what the Codependency Alchemy chat is. Codependency Alchemy is a community that we have over on Substack. So if you're looking for a place to be seen, to be witnessed, to get support, feedback, guidance, all of the things, to just be able to share with a bunch of people who get what you're going through because they're navigating it as well, please consider joining the Codependency Alchemy membership. It's only $63 for an entire year of support. It's a special discount code that I have for podcast listeners. So if you listen to this person's question and the response that I shared with this person and our members in the chat, and you're like, hey, I've got questions that come up, I got things that I would love support on like this is the place to go. So we have a private chat. It's available for members all of the time. You can always drop your questions, your reflections, your celebrations. It's a place where we come together to just hold one another in compassion and grace. So that's some details on what the heck I'm talking about when I say the Codependency Alchemy chat. So this member said, I find that I'm most often triggered when I'm feeling dismissed, invalidated, or perceived that I've been disrespected. For many years now, when I've tried to discuss this with my partner, there's a lot of blame shifting, a long list of other things that he does for me, lots of what about you comments, or I'm told that I shouldn't be upset about it. This all validates my feelings of invalidation, dismissal, or disrespect and turns into conflict unless I take care of his feelings. It leaves me feeling like I don't matter, like I'm too much, and that I'm just too difficult to understand. It's a brutal cycle. This, like, I feel like I could have written this. Not so much in my relationship with Justin, like that's very different, but like literally every other freaking relationship practically that I've been in was like this dynamic where it's immediately if I bring anything to the table, it's, well, what about you? Or they just have this super big reaction that it's like, it's not even worth it to bring things up, which again is just like silencing ourselves. And so I hope that as I've read this member's, reflection and in the chat that you guys can see like just how much we are all traversing and navigating very similar feelings and core wounds that just it's just permeating in so many of our relationships. Like something I often say is codependency is like the silent killer in all of our relationships because things like this happen and we make ourselves small, we silence ourselves over and over and over again, and it just strengthens that dynamic even more instead of giving other people the opportunity to rise to the occasion to change in the dynamic as well. And we're just too afraid a lot of times to take that responsibility to do something different. And so, anyways, I digress. But what I told her was one, like, thank you for sharing this. It's always just so vulnerable to share some of these patterns. And that is why I created Codependency Alchemy, both this podcast and the community, because I felt so alone and I felt so much shame around the patterns that I was becoming aware of that I just needed a place that could hold me in it, where we could bring some levity to these conversations because they can feel really heavy. Yeah, so just always grateful for our community and people who share in this space because I know it can feel very raw and vulnerable for a lot of us. And so with this person, I really wanted to affirm and validate that feeling dismissed, invalidated, or disrespected isn't a flaw. You know, that it's this part of you that is trying to tell you that it's not getting a need met, whether that's a need to be seen, a need to feel safe in our relationships. And when that need is not met by us, right, we're seeking it out in our relationships. And when it's not met in our relationships, we're like continuing to perpetuate the core wound of not being good enough, or like this person is saying, like, feeling like they're too much, right? That they're too much or like they don't matter, right? They're misunderstood. These are very, very common core wounds for people who struggle with codependency, is just feeling like we're too much or feeling like we're not enough or feeling like no one gets us, no one understands us. But really starting to see how it's our own, it's the ways that we are self-abandoning by not standing up for ourselves or not speaking out or not letting them be in their discomfort, setting boundaries for yourself so that you don't go into fixing it or changing it for them to making them feel more comfortable, which is what this person was sharing, right? I go into just taking care of his feelings instead of going in and letting him have his feelings. He gets to have his feelings. He gets to feel whatever way he feels. Let him feel those things because that is going to be really supportive in his healing journey, to sit with the discomfort that your truth brings up for him. That's how we evolve together. So we're really stunting their growth by going in and like putting a blanket over them and tucking them in and putting a passy in their mouth. Like, let them have their feelings, let them process the discomfort so that they can feel and move the energy and ask themselves, what can I do differently so that I don't need to go through this turmoil again? Like, it's going to elicit change, right? Or it's not. And that's information too, right? Okay, so here's where it gets really painful though. When we voice that need, whatever the need is, and it's met with deflection, like she was sharing, or it's met with blame shifting or emotional gaslighting, it reinforces that original wound that she was also naming about being too much or being misunderstood or not being good enough. And so unless we're conscious of the pattern, this pattern playing out, seeing what they do when you bring something forward, we end up believing it's our fault. We end up validating that core wound that we tell about ourselves already. And so, this is how I like to reality check this dynamic. You're trying to bring a repair to the conversation by naming something you need or by naming something that that has come up for you, right? Your trigger, whatever that is. So you're trying to bring something forward by saying, "Hey, this whatever this is, didn't feel good to me," right? And instead of being met with curiosity or care from your partner, maybe they're like, "Oh, thank you so much for sharing that with me." That takes emotional maturity, that takes accountability, that takes responsibility. And a lot of us were not taught this, ourselves included. Like we take responsibility for other people's shit, but we hardly take responsibility for our shit. So like they're just a mirror for where we also don't take responsibility for our own side of the street. That's a whole nother conversation, but I have to name that. So instead of being meeting with getting ahead of myself, instead of being met with curiosity, you're met with deflection, which might sound like, well, what about what you did? Right? They're immediately kind of putting it on you like this happened because that happened first. Or you're met with scorekeeping. Well, look at all of these things that I've done for you. So, like, overlook this one thing because this is all the other things that I do. Or you're met with minimization, like you're too sensitive, you shouldn't be upset, this isn't a big deal, I didn't mean it, I was just joking. That's a common one that Justin does. He was like, I was just joking. And I'm like, I hear that you were just joking and it wasn't a joke to me. Like, I can hear that you were trying to be funny, and to me that wasn't funny. And I've been so good. This is like a growing moment for me, because I used to be like, okay, it's fine. Now I'm like, I'm still like, I'm not laughing, it's not funny, and this is how it impacts me when you do that or when you say that. So making sure that he's still aware that like I'm not condoning this and this isn't actually supportive to our relationship, and this is how it's impacting me and how I'm showing up in the relationship, which gives him now the opportunity to rise to the occasion, to choose a different way of being. He can maybe joke like that with his buddies and say those things and whatever, but with me, you're going to be met with a boundary. Like, I'm going to walk away from the conversation. I'm going to disengage in the conversation because I'm not going to participate in a conversation where I don't feel comfortable. Okay. So it's like you can still be in these relationships so long as it's still safe. Like, and he gets to throw a fit about it. He gets to be like, oh my gosh, you're just so over the top. And I'm like, I hear you feel that I'm over the top and I feel valid in my experience. It's not easy. It's easier said than done, In those moments, it often feels triggering. And so I always, if I'm triggered, we just need space. We need to just take space, let there be a sacred pause, and come back to the conversation at a neutral time. So those examples that I was giving, the deflection, the scorekeeping, the minimization, these are all protective strategies on his end. Okay. But they're also not relationally mature responses. Okay. I also have to name that. And they like create a very unsafe feedback loop where your only options become over explaining. So you're trying to basically defend yourself, shutting down, completely withdrawing, silent treatment, pushing it all away, pushing them away, or caretaking his feelings, like she was saying in this example, where you're just trying to keep the peace. It's okay, never mind, like forget I brought it up. Or you even try to like go over the top and do something nice for them, like to make them happy again, right? So if those are ways that you end up showing up, I want you to know that it makes sense why you're doing that. A part of you learned that over explaining, shutting down, or taking care of them is going to help you create a safer environment, because what they're creating is an unsafe environment with their emotionally immature response. And I don't say emotionally immature to like demean them, but it's just like that is they are responding in a way that isn't like emotionally attuned. And when we go into that pattern, it's us, our wise body, our wise learning, our wise nervous system that is pulling out the stops. And it's like, there's a way that we can create safety here, and it's to do it this way. Right. So holding that compassion for ourselves, and also saying that, yes, this has kept us safe in the past. And thank goodness we learned these patterns, practices, tendencies at that time when we were children, because as children, we did need our parents. But as adults, we're in a completely different situation. We are responsible for ourselves. As children, parents are responsible for us because we can't feed ourselves. We can't put a roof over our head. We can't, et cetera, et cetera. But as adults, we can, right? So we have to shift the dynamic and not continue to allow our relationships to go into these unsafe relationship dynamics. Okay? So what can we do? This is really what I wanted to give you guys, because we can know all of this information, we can have all of these, we can logically understand it, but now what are the tangible action steps? What do we do if we find our relationship is looping in this pattern and this dynamic? First, you want to start validating yourself. Okay? This always is going to come back to you first tending to the part of you that is seeking out, because unless that is met, getting it from outside is never going to feel like enough. It doesn't mean that you don't get to receive that at all. That's not what I'm saying. It doesn't mean that you can't ever receive validation from anyone else, because the fact is you are going to, but it's that you aren't dependent on it from somebody else first, like making sure that you have validated that part of you, that you have told that part of you that your feelings are valid, that you deserve to be met, that you are important, right? That you are understood. If we don't do that inner child work to let that part of us know that they're not too much, or they're not enough, right? That they are enough. If we aren't taking time to sit with that part of us with compassion, grace, and unconditional love, then nothing else is going to go anywhere. Like, we always first have to meet ourselves. So, before going into the conversation with your partner, it's making sure you're tending to the parts of you that are already expecting to be dismissed. Okay. Because if you know that this pattern exists, I wouldn't go in with the expectations that it's going to go any other way. Like, how does this pattern play out? And then how can we create a positive catalyst to turn it around by doing something different first? So instead of going straight to them, going to yourself first and validating yourself by saying something like, it makes sense that you're scared to speak up. You haven't been received with care in the past. I'm with you now, and your feelings make sense, and you matter. When we take time to really validate ourselves first, we approach the conversation with our partners in a completely different energy. Having that your feelings make sense and you matter is going to have you go into the conversation way more steadfast, even if it is a little shaky in your boots, right? So, one, start by validating yourself. The second thing is you want to set a boundary around the dynamic, not the feeling, the dynamic. Okay. So, boundaries, if, if you've been here a while, then I'm a broken record. If this is your first time, welcome. You're going to hear this a lot. Boundaries are not about controlling somebody else and what they do, period. If you look at boundaries as a way to make someone do or not do something, you're missing the mark. That's called covert manipulation, and that doesn't work. At least not the way that we hope it does. Boundaries are not about controlling him. They're about protecting your energy uh, from an unhealthy loop, an unhealthy feedback loop that you're in. Okay. So you're setting boundaries around the dynamic, which means that the boundary actually has to do with an action that you are going to take when it is crossed. Because in these dynamics, babes, like, they're going to be crossed. Don't make that mean anything about the boundary or the person or you in the beginning. Like, it's just going to happen because this is the way that things have been done for a period of time. It's going to take a little bit of time to unravel from them. Okay. So, how does this boundary sound? I'm going to give you another example of what this could sound like. Hey, I'm open to having hard conversations and hearing feedback, but not in response to me expressing something vulnerable. If every time I bring up a hurt, it's met with a list of all of the ways I shouldn't feel that way, I end up silencing myself to avoid conflict. And that's just not sustainable for me. That's not going to continue to work. Okay. So you're allowing yourself to share the boundary of one, what are you here for? What will you sit and be present for? Which is having a hard conversation. Okay. I'm open to having a hard conversation and hearing feedback. Okay. That's what you're here for. I'm not here to hear a response in me expressing something vulnerable and you bringing up a hurt or blame or a list of ways I shouldn't feel that way. Okay. Because when that happens, I end up silencing myself to avoid conflict. Okay. So here's what I'm here for. Here's what I'm not here for. This is why I'm not here for that, because I end up silencing myself, and that's not sustainable. Okay. What I would also do to make this boundary setting even more clear is I would say what I'm going to do if that boundary is not met. So if they start blaming or giving the list or why you should or should not feel that way, I'm going to walk away until we're able to have a conversation where we are both taking accountability and responsibility and doing so in a calming, respectful, loving way. Like, I will walk away until we're able to have the conversation and it looks different. Okay. So that they have all the information. This is what I'm here for. This is what I'm not here for. This is why I'm not here for that thing, because it makes me silence myself. And if it goes into that blaming, I will walk away, but we can always come back to it when we're both ready to show up to the conversation with respect. Okay. Here's what I want you guys to remember. This is point 3. Be prepared for pushback. Like I said earlier, these dynamics are dynamics for a reason. They took 2 people, both of you, to create it, to strengthen it, and it's gotten really strong over time. So don't expect this person just to be like, sounds great, honey. This is solid. Good on you. This is way to go. No, they're probably going to be like, the fuck? Like, what are you talking about? Stop therapying me. Like, there's so many things that men say, right? Or partners say. Like, they immediately go into the same thing, blame shaming or putting it back on you. But that pushback is literally the moment that you get to enforce this boundary. So see the pushback. I encourage you to see the pushback as an opportunity to strengthen that muscle. If it were me, and this has been me in the past, I have learned to find a way to celebrate myself when I do this thing. So it's like, if and when I enforce a boundary that was really hard for me, how am I going to celebrate? That's why, like, the community can be really supportive. Like, I have a place to go to be like, this is what I used to do, but this is what I did instead. And this is how I'm celebrating myself. We just had tons of people this week even share about, like, this is what I usually do when I'm triggered, and this is what I did instead. And this was the positive input, like, impact that it had on me and my relationship. Have a place to go to celebrate, to be seen, even if it's like phoning a friend, someone super close to you that knows what you're moving through, or telling your therapist about it. Like, have some sort of way that you get to build this evidence that, like, these boundaries that are very hard and uncomfortable at first are making a positive impact in your life. Okay. So often, when someone is used to the dynamic where you absorb their emotions or you make it your job to manage their reactions, they're not going to like this shift. Okay. And I know I'm just like beating a dead horse at this point, but it goes back to that analogy that I've used in previous podcast episodes where it's like the drive-through window, right? If you've been working this drive-through window every day and your partner knows at 5 p.m. clockwork, he goes to the drive-through window, you feed him dinner. Okay? You're making dinner, you bring in the groceries, you make it. He comes to the drive-through window, you dish it out. Okay? Every day for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, Some of you guys have been married for 20 years and you're like, damn, we are in this pattern, right? So just imagine every day at 5, this person knows that you're going to dish them dinner at 5 p.m. out this drive-through window. Boundaries like this are you closing that drive-through window, or when they come up to the drive-through, you just kind of say like, closed, right? Like, I trust that you will go and find a way to feed yourself. They're not going to be happy. They're not going to be like, yeah, good idea. I'll go feed myself. They're going to be like, hey, I come to this window at 5 p.m. hungry and you feed me. This is what we do. This is the dynamic. This is the pattern. I have depended on you to feed me at 5 every fucking day out this window. And now you're telling me you're just not going to feed me? Like, I'm going to throw a fit. I'm going to freak the fuck out because in the past that works. And then you end up feeding me. Like, I'm going to revert to that dynamic because that has gotten me fed more than me being like, okay, yeah, maybe I'll go find a grocery store and figure out how to make food for the first time in my fucking life. Like, no, they're not going to do that. So that's the pushback that I want you to prepare for. But know that you closing that window and encouraging them to go find their own fucking food, that is going to help them way more than you giving in and being like, okay, yeah, sorry, never mind. Like, I don't know why I thought that was a good idea. You're right. I do always feed you here. Here you go. Like, all you're doing at that point is saying, hey, this dynamic that sucks for both of us because you need me. And if I like am out sick, we're both fucked. Like, I have to show up sick to feed you because you're dependent on me. That doesn't serve him or them, whoever your partner is. That doesn't serve them because they don't know how to take care of themselves at all. And you have to show up sick because they'll starve if you don't. You know what I mean? So just seeing how this dynamic isn't supportive and that pushback, I just wanted to bring that analogy forward again for us to see it maybe in that light as well. Like, that's kind of what it looks like. So it's like you closing the window, they're going to kick and scream a little bit on the other side because they're showing up hungry, right? Have you ever not been hungry and you're expecting to eat dinner at 5 and now it's 6 or 7 o'clock? Like, you get hangry. Okay. You're not showing up like, oh yeah, good idea. Sounds good. You're like, someone needs to feed me fucking like an hour ago. Okay. So pushback might sound like them telling you that you're selfish, them telling you that you don't appreciate them, them telling you that you're impossible to please. This, babes, is where you stay rooted in your clarity, not their projection. This is them throwing the fit at the drive-through window. Okay. This is them kicking and screaming. They're just trying to get a need met. That need is to be fed, right? They're just trying to get a need met, which is, hey, we do this dynamic and that is how we connect, right? They only know this pattern, but you know that this pattern isn't actually serving you guys anymore. They're resentful of you, you're resentful of them. And so what we get to approach them with when they are projecting their discomfort onto you is you get to say, I hear that you're upset about this right now, and I'm open to hearing more about that later when we're both calm. Right now, I need to know if we can address my hurt without changing the subject. Okay. You're validating their experience. You're letting them know that you're open to hearing about what they're talking about at a later time, because maybe they're trying to clear some of their resentments up in this moment where you're bringing up a hurt. No. If you have resentments, let's absolutely talk about them. I want to hear those. But right now, we're talking about this thing that came up for me. This isn't a tit for tat. Can you meet me in my hurt right now? And if not, then we can come back to this at a later time. So just making sure that you hold on to, this is the conversation we're talking about. Are you able to have this conversation with me without changing the subject and making it about your hurt? And let's set a time aside to talk about your hurt, though. And I'm open and willing to hear about that hurt. But that's the boundary. Okay. And if he can't, if he's like, no, fuck you, we're talking about that. You. That's information. Period. That is information. People will always meet you where they are able to. You then have to ask yourself, do you only want to be met at this place? Wherever this place is, this level, or are you ready to be met at a different level? And then you have to choose that. And so often we give that power to our partners. Oh, well, maybe if I stay, over time, they'll change, they'll figure it out. Like we basically say, I'm accepting the level that they're at. And then we become resentful. And then they end up being the bad guy in our story. And then we're the victim. That's not love. If Justin ever ends up the bad guy in my story, that's not love. Staying in that relationship is not love. That's me getting to validate a story I tell about myself about not being good enough or being too much or not being enough, whatever it is. Okay. All of the above, really, in codependency often. So, number 4, the fourth thing that I want to name here is to remember that your job is not to convince somebody to care. Your job is not to convince them that they need to change, that they need to care, that they need to show up differently. The boundary is going to illuminate if they're willing to grow with you or not. Let the boundary do that work. Okay. And so recognize when they don't know how to meet you in that. And then you have to decide what's best for you from there. If they can only meet you at this level, but you're desiring to be met a level higher, and I don't say higher to like be like good or bad or better or worse. I'm just, for lack of better terms, they can meet you at 1, but you're desiring to be met at 2 or 3. And you set that boundary and they're showing, hey, I've got only 1 to give you. Then you are deciding, if you stay, that you're willing to be met at 1. And that's okay. That's some people's that's everyone's choice to be met at 1. That's okay. I'm not saying that that's wrong or bad, but take it responsibility for your choosing that, right? And if you're resentful, then you're probably doing too much and you actually want to be met at 2, but you're afraid, which is also okay to be afraid. It's afraid to go to those next levels because if we have core wounds around not being good enough or being too much or being misunderstood, we might think that there's no one that's going to be able to meet us at 2, 3, 4, 5 level, right? So we're like, I got someone at 1 though. And our need for belonging, for love, our deep yearning and desire for that will keep us at 1 because we're not sure if there's anyone going to be at 2 or 3 or 4. That's why this goes back to the very first one. You have to be willing to validate yourself first. Because when you do that, guess what? You trust that there's going to be someone who meets you at 2 or 3 because you are going to be the one that meets you at 2 or 3. And when you meet yourself at 2 and 3, these are the levels. I don't know. Just roll with me in this. When you meet yourself at 2 and 3, guess what? You're going to magnetize other people who can meet you at those levels too. Okay. That's why the first one is so important. It's all about how you show up for yourself. Are you going to self-abandon? Because if you self-abandon, guess what? Others are going to probably abandon too. You're going to get that mirror. If this keeps happening, right? You keep going into this loop. They're unable to meet you. They're showing you that they can only meet you at 1. They aren't able to meet you in your hurt. They continue to go into blaming. Then you have to ask yourself, what part of me is hoping that he'll change if I just say it the right way? What would it mean to grieve that he might not be emotionally available in the way that I need? I'm going to pause for that one really quick. So often we have a dream attached to the person that we are unwilling to detach from. We think that this person equals family. This person equals happy home. This person equals true love. And we're unwilling to detach from the person and the dream that we have attached to that person. Okay. So we think if this person isn't in my life, I don't have the happy family. If this person isn't in my life, then I don't have the happy home or whatever it is. Okay. That might mean that you need to grieve that this person isn't attached to the dream. And then thirdly, what boundaries need to be in place so I stop betraying myself to preserve the relationship? What the the final boundary really looks like, and I've had to articulate this boundary in the past, is this is what I need and where I need to be met. Are you willing to meet me in that? And they're going to say yes, and they're going to say no, and let that lead you. It gets to be what I love to call true, brief, and clear. The least amount of details as possible. This is what I need, and this is how I need to be met. Are you willing and able to do that? And it's okay if you're not able to. It just means that we're not aligned anymore. And that's okay. And I trust that you'll find someone who meets you where you're at. And I trust that I'll meet someone who will meet me where I'm at. But it's not fair to either of us to stay in something where we're both being unmet. It's scary as fuck. And I've done it with Justin. We've done it actually multiple times in our relationship. And it's both invited us to consider, where are we willing to grow with this person and meet them at a different level. And there's, been times where we weren't able to, or weren't willing to meet each other, which is when we broke up, almost 6 years ago. That happens too. But it's like we have to be willing to have those conversations and make decisions from that place in order to all grow and evolve. So that's the wrap up of this episode. I'll kind of go back over those steps really quick. So, what can you do if that person that you're trying to bring a hurt to, if they meet you with deflection, scorekeeping, or minimizing, if they're telling you, well, look what you did here, or what about what you're doing? Look at all the things I've done for you, or you're too sensitive, you shouldn't be upset. And then you go into either over explaining and defending yourself, or shutting down and withdrawing, or maybe just caretaking their feelings to keep the peace. What you want to do in that dynamic, again, we're just recapping, is first start by validating yourself, letting that part of you know that it makes sense why you're scared to speak up, and that your feelings make sense, and that you matter, and that they're important. And then secondly, setting a boundary around the dynamic, not the feelings that are coming up around the dynamic, but just the dynamic in and of itself, by saying, this is what I'm open to, this is what I'm not open to, this is why I'm not open to that thing. Okay. I'm open to having hard conversations and hearing feedback. I'm not open to you like meeting me with blame or a list of things that why I shouldn't feel some way, because I end up silencing myself, and that's not sustainable for me. And then this is what I'll do. I'll need to walk away from the conversation until we can meet each other in this specific way around this topic. Third, be prepared for that pushback. The drive-through window analogy, like they're going to probably pitch a fit. That doesn't mean anything about your boundary. It doesn't mean that it's wrong or bad. It just means, hey, they're feeling the feels that come up with breaking this dynamic down to rubble, because something new needs to be built. Okay. And then remember that it's not your job to convince them to care or to change. They're going to show you. Are they willing to, do they go to the grocery store to figure out how to make their own dinner? Like, even if they go with their tail between their legs, or even if they go with like a grump face, or like sulking, like if they go, using this analogy, if they make these strides, like, okay, fine, even if they do it a little bit begrudgingly in the beginning, like, um, do they take those steps with you, even if they're messy, even if they're not perfect? Or do they double down, dig their heels in, and like do the dynamic tenfold, right? In which case you set that boundary. They are showing you the level that they're able to meet you at. And that does not mean that you need to lower your boundaries, or get rid of them, or even lower yourself to meet them there. I mean, you can, and many of us do, and that's a choice. And so also knowing that that choice is your accountability, like your responsibility. You get to make that choice, and so own it. And if you don't like it, then change it. I know that's easier said than done, but hopefully some of these questions that I gave you at the end will help you in uncovering some of the shadows beneath staying. So if you're looking for those shadow work prompts, I'll say them one more time. What part of me is hoping that he'll change if I just say it the right way? What would it mean to grieve that he might not be or they might not be emotionally available in the way that I need? And then what boundaries need to be in place so I stop betraying myself to preserve the relationship? If you want to check out these shadow work prompts and see all of these steps laid out, make sure you click the link below. I'll have the full Substack post so that you can reference all of this. And that would be a great place to subscribe if you aren't already. All you need to do is put your email in and you can get all of this in your inbox. Whew. Okay. Hopefully that felt supportive. I hope that whatever landed in a way that felt supportive and helpful. And anything that didn't, I hope that it just falls off of you like water. I truly, truly, truly hope that everyone listening to this episode knows that your hurts, your pains are not too much, that they're just pointing you back home to yourself, that they're just showing you what a part of you knows that you deserve and that you need and that you get to have. And that is wisdom. So you are not too much. I love you so much. And if this podcast episode was supportive to you, it would mean the world to me if you just took a moment to rate it or leave a review on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. It is a free way to support this podcast and reaching more people. It helps me just grow this community and yeah, get these conversations in front of people who are needing them and desiring these shifts in the way that we relate to others. And lastly, if you want to join the Codependency Alchemy membership over on Substack, make sure that you use the special discount code for podcast listeners. This season of the podcast, I am doing a special discount code. It gets you the membership for only $63 for an entire year of support. That makes it like $5 a month. It's so, so worth it. You get over like $900 worth of resources in master classes, meditations, and our community chat, which is just, in my opinion, like there's not a value you can put on it. It is truly invaluable. It's worth joining the membership for that alone. So I hope you guys whoever feels called to join, that you meet us over there on Substack, whether you're a free subscriber or you sign up for the membership and become a paid subscriber. It would be an honor to hold you there. So thank you for being a part of this community. I love you all so much. You are not too much. You are perfect. And I will see you next week. Bye.